I'm gonna keep on grinding. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying though is you have to respect what you've done. Take a second, not live in it, not sit around and say, I'm good. Sit back and say, let me look at the vantage point now that I'm at. That's why you reset the vantage point. Get the tactical advantage. If you get the tactical advantage too quick and start fighting, you got to take a second to take observation of where I'm at. What have I done? Am I in the right spot? I'm obviously in the right spot right now. Now we can go back to fighting. It's called you find peace. I never found peace until I got real sick. And you find peace by clarity. And there's no clarity when there's noise. When there's always a schedule in front of you to keep grinding at it. So my schedule's always there. I'm still alive. But in that grinding schedule, you have to have a point in there where it's okay, at 12 o'clock, reset the tactical advantage and look and see where you're at. At this new vantage point, stop for a second and survey the field. Because what I was doing was I had this big long schedule. And in this schedule, there was no take a second, see what the fuck you've accomplished. Because if I did all that shit in the military, after I got honor man at Ranger School, and I was the top leader amongst 300 people, when I got back to that second platoon, if I had taken the vantage point and said, okay, my God, man, you've really grown as a leader, I would have attacked the situation, that second platoon, much differently when I was like, oh, you guys don't want to work out this fucking hard? You ain't hard like this? I would have taken a step back and said, okay, hang on a second, man. You learned a lot. That's the tactical advantage. You got to take the advantage point and take a second to breathe and say, you learned a lot. But when you learn a lot, if you just go back into the fight, you never apply what you learned. You just get that certificate of graduation and go. Get it, remember what you learned, and use it. And that's about taking that 1 second out, get on top of that mountaintop, looking down and say, okay, how would I have handled this years ago? Wow, I would have really fucked that up. This time, let's not fuck it up again. But I have to be honest with you, it was the most eye-opening, refreshing time in my entire life. It was like it really made me reset. And it like what it said to me was, all right, man, we still got to find 100%. You can't run, you can't work out. So that's why I went to school and I became a medic. Stuff like that. I started doing I literally reset. So I'm always in constant pursuit of my 100%. Whatever that is. If I can't run anymore, I'm going to see what else I can do. So I was real proud of how I handled that. When my whole life got stripped from me, and I was at like 20 years in the military, and my life was getting stripped, man. And I couldn't run, I couldn't work out, I couldn't do shit anymore. And I didn't lose my shit. All that training I'd gone through, mental training I'd gone through, I was able to utilize it to find a lot of peace in myself, a lot of joy, and a lot of self-fulfillment. And it was actually not that bad of a time. What it was I never felt that my entire life. You're almost taught that shit. When you're born in a happy home and you're born around happy shit, it kind of comes out. I don't laugh. When you can't read and write and you're trying to hide out in classes and please don't call on me and shit, and you're fucking all scared and shit everywhere you go, you're nervous and you're panicked and you're stuttering, and your whole life is that shit. There's not joy in that shit. That becomes who you are no matter how much you change. You're scarred. So people are like, my God, man, you never smile, you never do this. It's my life. It's my life. So you got to teach yourself how to read and write and also fucking smile and say, it's okay. A lot of things aren't like, man, why don't you do this? Like, I don't judge people. That's why I don't judge the people. Man, you don't smile, look so hard, look this. Read my book and don't forget where I came from. It's who you are. You have to undo that shit. And no one came down and trained me on how to be happy, how to find peace, how to do this and that. That's why I'm so glad I found it through suffering. The greater the suffer, the greater the peace I found. But you have to reflect on where you came from the dungeon of hell that I came from. I had to reflect on that shit to find final peace. I'm the happiest motherfucker in the world because I did it. I piss people off along the way. Some people don't like me, Merry Christmas, whatever. But you can finally look in the fucking mirror and don't care what they say about you and be happy with it.
Happiness is a side effect. It's not a thing in itself. It's something that comes upon you. It's like an act of grace in some sense. You know perfectly well that we're subject to forces within us that aren't of our voluntary control. And certainly happiness is one of those, because you cannot will yourself to be happy. You might be able to will yourself to be unhappy, but you can't will yourself to be happy. There are certain preconditions that have to be met that are quite mysterious in order for you to be happy, and then it happens. And then maybe, if you're wise, you regard that as a minor incomprehensible miracle that somehow you happen to be in the right place at the right time. Now, I've made the case that the most effective means of pursuing the good life, which is not the same as pursuing happiness, is to adopt something like a stance of maximal responsibility towards the suffering and malevolence in the world. And I think that should be pursued primarily as an individual responsibility. It's not like I don't think that political and familial larger organizations are necessary, but in the final analysis, we each suffer alone in some fundamental sense, and we have our own malevolence to contend with in some fundamental sense, and the proper beginning of moral behavior, which is the proper beginning of the right way to act in the world, is to take responsibility for that. I think you do what you can to conceptualize the highest good that you can conceptualize. That's the first thing, to develop a vision of what might be. And it has to be a personalized vision as well as a universalized vision. And then you work diligently to ensure that your actions are in keeping with that, and you allow yourself on that pursuit to be informed by the knowledge of your ignorance and the necessity for acting and speaking in truth. And a fair bit of that, I believe, is derived, I think it's fair to say that that's derived from an underlying Judeo-Christian ethic, and I make no bones about the fact that I think of those stories metaphysically or philosophically or psychologically as fundamental to the proper functioning of our society insofar as it can function properly. And so it's not happiness, it's meaning. And meaning is to be found in the adoption of responsibility. And then I'll close with this. The responsibility is not only to do what you believe to be right. That's not, because that's duty. That's not enough. That's sort of what the conservatives put forward as the ultimate virtue, which is duty. It's not that. It's that you're acting in a manner that is in accordance with what you believe to be right, but you're doing it in a manner that simultaneously expands your ability to do it, which means that you cannot stay safely ensconced within the confines of your current ethical beliefs. You have to stand on the edge of what you know and encounter continually the consequences of your ignorance to expand your domain of knowledge and ability so that you're not only acting in an efficient manner, but you're increasing the efficiency and productivity and meaningfulness of what it is that you're engaged in. And I think that, and I believe that the psychological evidence supports this, even the neuropsychological evidence, is that that's when true happiness descends upon you, because it's an indication from the deepest recesses of your psyche, biologically instantiated, that you're in the right place at the right time. You're doing what you should be doing, but you're doing it in a manner that expands your capacity to do even better things in the future. And I think that's the deepest human instinct there is. It's not rational. It's far deeper than that. And it's something that's genuine and that exists within us and that constitutes a proper guide if you don't pervert it with self-deception and deceit.
And, it's like it's a rare person that doesn't have some catastrophe one person away from them. It's like life is to be happy. That's not right. And we can at least derive that from these stories. That isn't what they say at all. God's perfectly happy in the stories to grant the people with whom he forms a covenant happiness and prosperity, but there's never a word that that's the purpose. The rule is aim high and get your bloody act together. That's the rule, and establish this contractual covenant with the ultimate ideal, and that will see you through the catastrophes. And that's a much more mature way of looking at life as far as I'm concerned, because all you have to do is have your eyes half open and you see that the fundamental reality of life is tragedy and suffering. That's inescapable.